Hey y'all, welcome back to the homestead. If you haven't been here before, I'm Sherilyn, and this is Just Goodness 333 Little Homestead. And today we're going to be canning some chicken. Look at this. We're going to be canning chicken two different ways. And y'all, people call this ugly chicken. Ooh, look, I got some light reflection going on. People call this ugly chicken, and I'll let you see why. This is not ugly to me. To me, this is beautiful. To me, this is full of health benefits, and it's delicious, and you make it at home, and it's cheaper than the grocery store. So come on, let's do this. Now, one more thing. I mentioned health benefits, and I didn't go into any details. This is bone-in chicken. This is actually thighs I did with the bone-in. There we are. And if you'll see this nice layer of fat up here, if you're on like a keto diet or other diets and they talk to you about healthy fats, chicken fat is one that's really considered very healthy. You need some good fats in your diet. They really help all that goodness. This is chunks of chicken breast with no bones in it. And it cooks in its own juices. If you cook it first, I've had chicken that you cook first and then you can it in broth. And to me, I just prefer this method. To me, this just tastes better. To me, now I'm not saying that I've tasted everybody's method and I've tasted everyone's chicken. I don't know. You guys may do that and it may be wonderful. But to me, when I tried to cook it first and then can it in broth, you know, when you have a roast chicken and then you try to can the leftovers, to me it just I just haven't liked it as much as I like this method. And we'll leave it at that. But this, with the bone in, you're also getting the marrow and the benefits of like bone broth, which I absolutely love. My grandmother was old school. She would go in the backyard, catch a chicken, we'd boil some water, we'd pluck it, gut it, and then she would make food with that and the bone broth and the skin on. And these were skinless. But today we're going to be doing some drumsticks. We're going to do some chicken breast in a little bit. But first we're going to do some drumsticks. I'm going to leave everything on there, guys. I'm going to leave the skin. I'm going to leave the bones in. You can debone it if you want to. You can take the skin off if you want to. Totally up to you. But it's all safe and it's all good. I like the skin on because like Mama said, the skin and the bones, that's where the flavor is. What we're doing today is called a raw pack because you have your cool raw meat and we're packing it in these jars. So if I were using pint jars, I may sometimes have to cut off that little nub right there. And I just use a good kitchen knife and give it a good whack and knock that little ankle nub off. But since we're going to use quart jars, which is what I mostly have, I am going to leave that on there. And then see, I put one with the big side down. Then I'm going to put one with the small side down. And try to fit it in any way you can get it in down there. I'm going to do, and you are packing this stuff. I'm going to pack it in there. Excuse you. Pack it in there as good as you can. I'm going to try to get another small one in there. There you go. Now that's 4 legs. I don't think I can get another in here without cutting it. Alright, I'm going to look for a skinny leg here. This one's kind of skinny and see if I can fit it in this way. You want it down under that 1-inch mark. And ta-da! Got it! We got 5 drumsticks in this quart jar. Now I'm going to finish the rest of these and I'll bring you back. Some of these are really huge, see, and some are really kind of skinny. I got this on 5-pound bags at my Walmart for 65 cents a pound. That's a really good savings. So I have gotten 4 or 5 in each jar, depending on how big they are. This is 10 pounds of chicken. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quart jars of chicken. Now that we have these all packed, this is all drumsticks. If you find yourself you only have 1 or 2 drumsticks left, you can put any other kind of chicken in here with this. Maybe a breast, maybe anything. You can do any chicken this way. Breast I would probably do without the bones because the bones and the ribs just take up so much space. But this is nice and packed. Our next step is going to be to put 1/2 teaspoon of salt in each one. I'm using a canning salt from Ball. You can use pink salt, Redmond salt, any kind of a real salt. And the reason you really don't want to use like an iodized table salt is because those things can discolor and they just aren't the best choice for canning. They're not the best choice, period, but if it's all you have, you can do it. Now that we've put 1/2 teaspoon of salt in each one, I'm going to take some white vinegar on a rag. I have a paper towel here. Now, because this is greasy, you're going to want vinegar. Vinegar will cut the grease. If you're doing some vegetables that aren't greasy, you don't have to use vinegar. I'm going to wipe off all the rims really well. We don't want to have any salt grains on there or any kind of fat residue, anything that could prevent that from making a really great seal. I'm going to switch around to the other side and apply a little pressure when you do it. Make sure you get everything off. Now, I did not sterilize these jars because we are pressure canning. These jars, I did wash them. They're nice and clean, but they were not sterile. The jars were cold. We put cold meat in here, and we're going to start with cold water in the canner. I am using Ball lids. I was fortunate enough. I've always tried to be prepared as a canner, so I have had a good stock even before the shortages started. I'm just going to put these on here. No water, no broth, no nothing. When you put your ring on here, finger tight, just your fingers, not your hand. Get it as tight as you can with just your fingers. If you over tighten it, it can cause a false seal. The air will not be able to escape from in here. Lots of different issues, so just finger tight. Let's talk canning lids for just a minute. Today we're using the Ball canning lids. They have this little nipple on it. I hope you can see it right there. Ball states that the way they make their lids, they no longer have to be warmed up or simmered. So we're not doing that today because Ball says, and I've used them and I've never had a problem without warming or simmering. I have also not had a problem ever with the Walmart brand lids. These are Mainstay. Let me show you something else. Not the lids that come on the Anchor Hocking jars that Walmart carries. These are called Mainstay. They're canning lids. They also have a little bubble on them. The little nipple thing, you can see that right here. If you look at it, there's a little nipply thing in the middle. Never had a problem not simmering those. But if you have the Anchor Hocking lids or any lid that comes, this is an Anchor Hocking lid that comes without that little bubble. That's just a flat surface. Most assuredly, you want to simmer these. I have pressure canned with them and a lot of the lids have buckled. So if you are using a lid, especially one that has no button on it right there in the middle, no nipply thing, you're definitely going to want to simmer these, you know, and get them nice and warm so you can soften this rubber and soften the metal, and it'll work better for you. And that little troubleshooting trick I learned from Constance at Cosmopolitan Cornbread. You guys go check her out. She's amazing. And she bought some of these Anchor Hocking jars and the lids buckled. And then she troubleshooted it and found that if you simmer them, then they work. So thank you, Constance. And for the rest of us, remember, if it's a Ball canning jar, a canning lid, or a Mainstay lid, or a lid that has a bubble, you may want to do some research. I just picked up a bunch of Golden Harvest lids and rings on a clearance rack at the Dollar General. So I'm gonna have to look up online and troubleshoot that and see if we have to seal those as well. Simmer those as well. I'm tongue-tied today. Okay, I have got 2 inches of water in my smaller pressure canner. When I'm doing quartz, I like to use the pressure canner that's smaller because it just less airspace, takes less time to vent. It's just preference. You can still use the big one. I'm going to put this on high, and this is nice cool water in here. And I'm going to put these jars right on in. Of course, we have our little metal plate on the bottom. This is my Presto pressure canner, and it would hold 7 quarts, but we only got 6 out of that 10 pounds of chicken drumsticks. Now I'm going to do something today. I'm going to show you guys. In the canner, a lot of you canners already know this. There's a lot of new canners out there, so just to cover all the bases, you have your rubber gasket, and this can get a little worn, a little dried out, so I'm going to put some oil on it. Use any cooking oil. I'm going to use some sunflower oil. Just going to get it on my fingers. Woo! And go all around it. Just get it nice and rubbed in there, nice and lubricated. This will help it not to suffer a lot of damage. This should be part of a regular maintenance on your canner. Then we're going to tuck it right back in place. While I have some oil in my hand, I'm also just going to rub this little pressure relief valve. Just give it a little rub. Get some oil on there. Find the little mark right here. Find the one corresponding on the handle. Set it in place and close it. Now we're going to wait for this to come up to steam. It's going to vent a plume, a steady plume of steam. And we're going to let it do that for 10 minutes. Okay, there's our timer. This has vented for 10 minutes. I'm going to take my 10-pound pressure weight, put it right on the top, and we're going to wait for this thing to start spitting and spinning. It's going to start going like that. We're going to wait for it to do it on its own. Okay? Now it's spitting and sputtering and spinning almost. I'm going to turn this down. I know on my stove it's between 6.5 and 7. You're going to want to keep this thing moving. If it stops for 20 seconds or so, if it stops for 20, 30 seconds or so, that's okay. But you're going to want to make sure the pressure stays up. If you see that it hasn't been rocking or it has stopped completely and you wait 30 seconds and it doesn't move, you're going to have to turn it back up, build the pressure back up, and restart your time. But it's pretty easy. Once you find that sweet spot on your stove, you'll know. So I'm going to set the timer for 90 minutes since we're doing quartz. It is loud in here, guys. The canner is going. Now I've got 10 pounds of chicken breast here, all cut up in chunks about yay big, give or take. And I got this at Walmart. It is $18 for 10 pounds. This is just chicken breast, boneless, skinless. I am going to use my canning funnel here today, just to reduce the amount of any mess we get on here. Chicken legs don't fit in there, so we're going to just do it like this. Whoop. then you get it in there, press it down really low. Now there is juices and broth in this, so I have never canned harvested chicken breast, you know, that we harvested ourselves. So I don't know how much broth that will have, but I do know when you buy it in these bags, they inject it with like a saline water. So it does produce a lot of broth. So that's it. We got it packed all down. Don't worry about these little bubbles and stuff on the bottom. The juices from the chicken are going to fill that up. Y'all, I've done this whole video up to this point and never even realized I had some breakfast on my shirt. If y'all saw that, please forgive me. Okay, so I got all of that chicken cut up and put into my pint-sized jars. And again, for both the quarts and the pints, I chose wide mouth jars today. I feel working with meat, since it's chunkier and bigger, that's just really easy and a lot easier to get it out. So we got that in there. Just like before, we're going to put salt. This says these are pint jars. I'm going to use 1/4 teaspoon of salt instead of 1/2. You don't have to use any salt at all. But if you're like me, I feel that if you wait till afterwards to salt it to flavor, you have to add more salt afterwards. So I just kind of like to add it here in the beginning. Okay, the timer just went off on the quart jars of chicken, and I'm going to pick this up, just set it aside. It's a nice piece of wood here, and then I'm going to bring my big canner over. Again, we've got cold water because this chicken is cold. I'm going to stagger these in here. This canner can hold 14 pints. Since I have another load, I'm just gonna double stack this one with 12 and finish up in my small canner after this one has cooled down, and I can take the quarts out. When this one is done, I can just put that one back on. Now we're gonna set this one aside. It's gonna cool down, and here's that pressure valve right here. When this drops, I'm gonna remove the weight, and I'm gonna still leave it set for about 5 minutes. Before I open the jar, let's let this come down as slow as we can. Well, y'all, it's the next morning, and I waited till now because I couldn't figure out how I was going to title this video and exactly what I was going to say. So I think I'm going to title this video Canning Chicken Step by Step and a Warning. Yesterday even I watched Roots and Refuge, and Jessica was even saying don't leave the kitchen area when you're canning because you have to monitor the pressure. And we got busy with homeschool. We got busy when my dad came over. We came outside. He was doing something outside. We visited with him. And I got a little cocky. I thought, well, you know, I've done this a dozen times at least in, you know, the last little bit, much more than a dozen. And everything is going to be fine. I had a glitch in the knob on my stove and didn't realize it. When I took out the first batch of quarts, you see there's only 4 jars here and we did 6. 2 jars were cracked. And I didn't even think about it. I thought, well, what happened? Maybe they were old jars. That happens if you get some hairline cracks. Maybe there was a flaw in the jar. And so I moved on to the next round in my other canner. So we used 2 different canners, so I know it wasn't the canner. And I double stacked and did 12 jars of pints. You know, put them on, set the temperature, went on to do homeschool, went on to do other things. And when I opened that, 3 of the pint jars were broken, and there was hardly any water in the bottom of the canner. And I thought, this is crazy. There's no way I had 5 faulty jars. So on the third batch, when I just had the remaining single jars back in the small canner, I paid close attention. When I turn the temperature down on the stove to get it to where I know it always sits at a good temperature to keep the pressure just right, it didn't go down. It continued to spit furiously. I mean, spitting and spinning like it was about to take flight. And seriously. And I tried the stove. I turned the heat down more. Nothing happened. I turned the heat down almost to a medium low, and nothing changed. That's when I realized there's either a glitch in the sensor on my stove or in the knob. So I had to turn it all the way off, wait for the pressure valve to come down to where it was just rocking normally where you would want it. And then from the other direction, instead of going straight to high and coming down, I went to the low and came up and put it where it normally goes, and it worked that time. So in the last batch, we had no problems. So this is the canning chicken step by step, and a big warning video. Don't get cocky like I did and leave your pressure canner unattended. Well, thank you guys for stopping by the homestead. I hope you learned how to can chicken, and I hope you learned what not to do based on my mistake. So we did lose 5 jars, which is sad. That's 5 meals for my family. But we did end up with all this beauty.